Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV and welcome to FPTV new releases. And today we're delighted to be joined by Stuart Turton, the author of the amazing 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. But today he's here with myself and Forbidden Planet's head book buyer, Laura Dodd. Hello, Laura. To talk about his new book, The Devil and the Dark Water. How are you, mate?
I'm bloody brilliant, thanks very much. Yeah, I feel like I've got to match your enthusiasm. I don't even know if it's possible.
I'm famous for my enthusiasm.
It's great. I'm loving it, yeah, especially this time of the morning. It's fantastic. Yeah, exactly. I'm ready to go. I'm pumped.
That's 5 cups of coffee for you, mate.
Oh, yeah, but I am absolutely marvellous. Thanks for having me, and thank you, Laura, as well, for getting me on. I appreciate it.
No, not a problem.
Thanks for joining us. In fact, Laura is the architect of the special Forbidden Planet edition of The Devil and the Dark Water that we got, which I know Laura's been super excited about, and is, as you will see from the shots you can link to from this video, it's a beautiful edition of the book. We're really proud to be carrying it, mate.
Yeah, it's sensationally lovely. When I first saw that, I was immediately head over heels in love. It's so great. Like, because when you're writing a book, right, you don't ever dream of sort of like people even buying it, or at least I didn't. And then it's like, you get to your second book and you've got special editions like this with other people, creative people, brilliant people are putting this amount of effort into it and this amount of skill. It's something else, mate. It's absolutely blown me away. I love it to pieces.
Yeah, no, we're very proud of it, and we're very pleased that you wanted to do it with us. And I know, like, Lauria, I'm giving a new name here, mate. Lauria, right from now on. What am I talking about?
That is.
I need another cup of coffee. Yeah, so Laura's a huge fan of your work. So I know she's got a bunch of questions that she's busting to ask. So
I was just going to drop something in as well. So I'm currently cat sitting for another FP colleague, and I found this on her bedside table.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
Reading.
Oh, with the bookmark in it as well.
I know. So, yeah.
A phenomenally natural plug that is. That is how very organic.
I should cat sit more often.
Is there any indication of whether she's enjoying it or not? I'm still sort of like, my ego's still super fragile. Yeah. Even after all this time, it's like, does she write anything in the pages just saying, I love this book? I mean, anything like that people naturally do.
I think she said she's enjoying it, but you wrote a very cheeky message in the front. I think it was when you did a signing with us. So
yeah, sounds about right. Yeah, I think like people I like and know get very, very cheeky messages or drawings of things.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I've managed to inherit a 2-bedroom flat and a cat just for 1 week. So, could be a lot worse.
So that backdrop is not yours? You didn't just put
No. So I have like a teeny tiny flat in West London that's like 2 very small rooms. So now I've suddenly
yeah, we've been marvelling at this backdrop all week. It's amazing. The different phases of the moon. It's lovely. Something very tranquil about it, I think.
It's so good. So Ali, who I'm cat sitting for, actually edits all the videos for FPTV. So she's very, very good. So she's going to make you look even better.
Yeah, she's the best. She is the best.
Unless that message in the front of the book was super cheeky, in which case she's really going to screw me up here, isn't she? I'll just be like, she'll cut the message really badly. Be like, I hate Forbidden Planet readers.
Bad for life.
Yeah, that's it. So, mate, what can you tell us about The Devil in the Dark Water? What can you tell us about the story and about your inspiration for getting into it?
I can tell you more about the inspiration because actually, like the 7 Deaths, I write books where I try to put a twist on every page. Effectively, like right from the get-go, from the first page, I want it just to be constantly zigging and zagging. So look, I'm going to give you my elevator pitch. Please forgive me. I've only done this elevator pitch about 6 times because I'm not really geared up for press for this. But by the end of 2 years, this will be silky smooth. But you're getting the shit version. But I'm describing it as it's a supernatural Sherlock Holmes style seafaring mystery novel. That's what I'm doing. So it takes place in 1634 aboard a merchant vessel that's traveling from Jakarta, Jakarta in Indonesia, all the way over to Amsterdam. And the voyage takes 10 months. And on board, you've got all these passengers and crew from different backgrounds and walks of life. And the world's greatest detective, who's in chains, he's committed a crime. We don't know what it is. His loyal bodyguard and a noble woman with a secret called Sarah Vessel. And so they all get on this ship. And no sooner are they out to port than spooky, supernatural things begin to happen. And it looks like there's a demon bedeviling the ship. And things just get worse and worse and worse as we go along. But as I say, the greatest detective in the world would sort it out, except he's locked up. He's a prisoner, so it's left to his Watson, his sidekick, to try and solve the mystery in his stead. So that's kind of the barest outline of what's going on. And then, like, this is like me describing Seven Deaths as like a time travel body hopping murder mystery novel, right? It's the barest sketch of what starts happening in the book and how madly sort of like complex and genre bending it actually becomes. So yeah, it's got a lot in common with that book. As for the inspiration, my chair just broke.
Oh, love it.
That's great. The supernatural chair haunting.
You're bringing a 3D experience here that we haven't. You got that today on these interviews. This is really fleshing out for us.
Yeah, as for the inspiration, actually, it's a really weird story. So I tend to, for Seven Deaths, my inspiration was being on a plane going somewhere. And for this one, actually, same sort of thing. So I was 23 and I was backpacking around Australia. Missed a flight out of Australia because I was in entirely the wrong city. I was supposed to fly out of Darwin and I'd gone to Perth thinking I was flying out of Perth. Wrong city, wrong flight, wrong everything. And I got trapped in Perth. And I ended up going to kill time until my next flight, I went to the Maritime Museum, which is just wonderful. And if we're ever allowed to go anywhere ever again, I recommend everyone goes to that museum. It's wonderful because the western coast of Australia's got all this amazing history of shipwrecks, right? Like it's just this perilous, awful place, especially in this period. This is where they were all getting smashed up and dying badly. And one of the wrecks was called the Batavia. And now it looks back, historians think it was the first documented case of the first sociopath in history. So what happens? Ship gets wrecked, 200 survivors off the boat. They wash up on these Albatross Islands. The captain gets in a longboat, goes off to find help. He disappears. He leaves the passengers and survivors with the, I think, chief merchant, who then proceeded over the next sort of like 6 weeks to murder, maim, butcher, and kill almost everyone on the island. Like it's a really horrific, awful, horrible story. I didn't want to write that, but within that story, there's all these other tales of like heroism. Like it's really cool. Like there's loads of stuff. Like the captain's voyage is remarkable. In any other piece of history, him getting from that island, because it's uncharted seas, he has no idea where he is. And by, celestial navigation, he gets himself there in a small boat all the way back to Indonesia. Like it's an incredible voyage. It's incredibly heroic. There was a soldier on the island who led a resistance against this sociopath and managed to get some of the passengers to safety. He even ended up capturing the sociopath. So by the time the captain gets back, like he's taking control of the island. That's an incredible story. So within it, with all these nuggets of like interesting acts of heroism and sort of like peril and danger, it's just too brutal for me to write straight up. So I took the core of it. I took the sort of seafaring bit. I took the islands. I took even some bits of different characters who were on the boat. And I overlaid it with like a Sherlock Holmes mystery. I made it about adventure and fun. And then I dragged in a ton of like the superstitions of the day. I dragged in a ton of this because they generally believed in like witches, witchcraft and demons and all this sort of stuff. So I thought it'd just be brilliant to reflect that. So I pulled it all in and sort of like the research for this book was absolutely mental once it got going.
I mean, that's an incredibly wealthy story. It's a much more detailed response than I expected, because that's made me want to read your book, and it's made me want to go and research that whole historical event as well. That sounds amazing.
Oh mate, it's fantastic. Like the everything about that shipwreck is within itself, it's an incredible story, and it scandalized Europe at the time. Like it went right across, and this time when that didn't really happen.
Yeah.
Everybody knew about this wreck and everyone knew what happened and everyone was horrified by it, and it caused some changes to happen. But this period, I didn't know anything about it. So because the real historical ship that got wrecked it belonged to the Dutch East India Company. So everyone knows a bit because it's our history. We know about the British East India Company, Dutch East India Company, didn't know too much about. So researching those guys, they're awful. I mean, they're horrific as well. But within them are the seeds of modern capitalism, sort of like mega conglomerates and sort of the way businesses are set up now. They were the first company to be like publicly listed on a stock exchange. Like they invented a lot of our modern day capitalist problems, not to go too Marxist on this entire thing, but like So delving back into that and finding these historical parallels, which, you know, are interesting. They can be referenced without being the story about them. As you said, it's just a wealthy bit of history, and it's a wealthy story, and then it's just really good fun.
Yeah, no, it sounds awesome. And am I right in thinking that the focus of the novel is primarily on the sidekick character?
Yeah, exactly. So sorry, I thought you said psychic character there.
The psychic, that's right. What's this guy talking about?
Well, now I feel like I've written the wrong book, don't I? I feel like I've missed a massive opportunity.
Yeah. There's probably some great book about the League of Liverpool Psychics out there waiting to be written. You know
exactly. I mean? Well, I'm going to do it next.
This is ideas in action, folks, happening right here.
Yeah, I was like, the psychic character. Am I just going to bluff this out? Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, it's about, so it's about the psychic character because, oh my God, I'm just going to make an enemy of all Sherlock Holmes fans. I read Sherlock Holmes again. I read Agatha Christie. Then I moved on to Sherlock Holmes when I was done with Agatha Christie. And I've always had a problem with Sherlock Holmes. Like, always, my entire life. I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'll commit to it. Sherlock Holmes is a dick. Like, he is just, and it's weirdly sort of slightly acknowledged, but then everyone seems to think it's great in the book. It's a really odd tone it strikes. It's like, oh yeah, he's a bit of a tool, but you know, he's a genius. And it's like, in our modern world, if someone's a tool and a genius, the latter does not excuse the former. We don't allow it to happen. So, and he's only ever interested mostly in sort of like, he's not interested in helping the little guy, he's interested in intellectual exercises. He's quite a selfish character. So, but he's always treated as like noble and laudable and heroic. Whereas Dr. Watson, who is laudable and heroic, he was a war hero who's come back and been injured. He's a doctor, for Christ's sake. Like, and he appears to be a very good doctor, but we all treat him like he's a buffoon. All the way through the books, he's an idiot. Inspector Lestrade, you know, he runs the world's modern police force, the most formidable crime-fighting organisation of the day, and he's an absolute moron, like all the way through it. And then you've got these, it's weird, it's bizarre. And when you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. And then you've got all these weird stories where, you know, Sherlock Holmes, somebody's like walking up to his door in Baker Street, and that's all great. And with barely looking out the window, he can tell you every facet of their life, like where they served, that they were in the army, that they had like 3 wives, that someone recently died, blah, 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 blah. Amazing stuff. And then when he gets into the actual case, all those spills just disappear. All those skills are just gone. And he's just suddenly noticing things written on walls that nobody else noticed. Like, why is this? What's going on? So but I always love the actual stories. I love the adventurous part of the stories. I love the sort of like, somebody said this once, I think it was Stephen Moffat actually, you know, Sherlock Holmes does go on adventures. He doesn't have cases. So, and that is completely true. And I love that. You know, he goes and like Hound of the Baskervilles, so he goes to a gloomy moor and he just, you know, he's tracking down a devil dog. Like, oh, these things are pretty cool. So I wanted that feel and I wanted that dynamic of Sherlock Holmes Watson dynamic. But I wanted it called out. I wanted all the weirdness of it to be called out. I wanted my sidekick characters to get the limelight. So I wanted them to be as important to the investigation. Because for me, it's more interesting to see them try and rise to the challenge of a mystery than watching someone who you know is definitely going to solve the mystery and still get credit for doing the thing that he was always going to do. I also wanted to see him humbled, which is why I've kind of made him prisoner on the ship and see how that changes his character and stuff. So there's a lot of like that Sherlock Holmes Watson dynamic in the book because I do love it, but there's a lot of me criticizing the Sherlock Holmes Watson dynamic of bits that I don't like, so it's kind of implicit. I've absolutely no idea how people will react to that. It's going to be interesting, I think.
I would think it sounds like such an intriguing idea, and it will be so resonant that I'm sure people will embrace it. Because you're right, of course, you know, you're dead right. Sherlock Holmes is a superior bastard, you know, and you know, when you read the books, it's like, that's spot on about that is a Moffat quote, you know, about the adventure, about Sherlock Holmes novels being adventures, right? But it's so true because as you say, you know, when you look at him through the prism of today's society, you know, the fact that he's an arsehole, you know, it doesn't kind of you don't respect the brilliance that you see from him, given how poorly he treats people around him, right?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
And I think it's such an interesting way into the whole thing.
Oh, thank you. But you also noticed, don't you, like the Moffat adaptations of it, they did try and soften Holmes a lot. Like they tried to they brought in his family loads, and all of a sudden, like you see, he's been nice to people. and he's still a bit superior, but like the entire arc of the show is about making him less superior. The arc is about making him into a human being, so at least you can be like, oh, he's getting nicer. The books never bothered with that. The books were just like, he's a git, he's going to carry on being a git, but we all love him anyway. Well, this guy doesn't.
And they do a great job of pulling out the heroism of John Watson, which is the thing that you've just focused on as well, which is true. You know, as you say, he's from Afghanistan, whatever. So basically, without you know giving away the fabric of the novel, you know, sort of how do you go in through the sidekick? What's the is it the fact that the hero is essentially chained up when the book starts? Is that how you get into that?
Yeah, and then just honour the sidekick. So it's not that like my Sherlock Holmes character is called Samuel Pepys. And it's not that Samuel Pepys is chained up, he's a prisoner, he's humbled, and then my sidekick character simply becomes him. He doesn't. You can't do that. That's not the way it's going to work. My sidekick character is a guy called Aaron Hayes. It's his bodyguard. He's still a bodyguard. He's still a soldier at heart. He thinks like a soldier. He also he has doubts about his own abilities. He doesn't think he can do this. He doesn't think he can be his mentor. So his principal worry in the book is getting him out of chain so he can solve the mystery. And he's grudgingly trying to solve it himself because he doesn't think he can do it. So you've also got this thing, and he's like a huge guy. He's he's used to using violence. Like his entire point is that he uses violence, and that's how he communicates with the world. He's there to stand in front of somebody else who's about to get hurt. And so like I wanted to honor that mindset. I wanted to honor him, like not just suddenly like, oh, I can do what he did. He can't do that. He's got to find his own way into it, and he's got to find his own courage. He's got to find his own way of doing these things, and but he's also an intelligent guy. But there's a line in the book which is basically about how long can you stand next to a genius before you consider yourself stupid? Like even if you're an intelligent guy, if you stood next to Einstein, you're going to think you're an idiot, even if you can do a fair bit of maths. And that's what's happened. So the book is also a little bit about that. It's about these sidekick characters. It's about what's been stood next to a genius does to them and how they react to it. And then there's another character in the book who comes in, Sarah Vessel, who's a noble woman with a secret. And she's going to help as well. Like she's going to step into, but she's far more up for doing that. She's far more up for being an investigator and a detective and sort of like breaking the shackles of her life. So she kind of like ends up dragging Aaron along with her. And their dynamic is absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic. I can't wait. That's a very exciting description. Laura, I know you've got a bunch of other questions. So
I do. I was just going to ask, along with Watson, what other kind of favourite sidekick characters do you have, like from books and films? Like, is there anyone else you rate?
As a sidekick, that's an excellent question, isn't it? Because I principally am drawn to mysteries. So, like, you've got Poirot's got Hastings. That's, so he's my like other go-to sidekick. But he's genuinely useless. But he's written but he's written with such buffoonish joy. Like it's just like Christie obviously liked Hastings a lot more than she liked Poirot. And I get the feeling that she knew a few Hastingsins around her. Like she's got a great deal of sort of affection for that character. So you end up being affectionate to, even though all he's there to do is ask a bunch of stupid questions, which he always does unfailingly. I'm also a sucker for I do love. Who's the cat in Alien? Is it Jonesy?
Yes.
Who's the
yes.
cat?
Yeah, Jones. Yeah.
Who is just like is there at the end of the like and that cat survives the entire thing on Alien, right? And then turns up in Aliens at the beginning as well. And I love the fact that cat throughout this entire story is prowling around. I'd love to do there was that Buffy episode of Zephyr, which like shows it from Xander's point of view while the adventure's going around him. Yeah, I'd love to see Alien told from the cat's point of view. He's just like, going through. I imagine he's just like looking at the alien's looking at the cat, then the alien goes off, slaughters somebody, and then just one day like the alien's just stroking the cat, and they have a really sort of tender relationship. Like I quite like that. I quite like that Jonesy survives that. So that's my favourite sidekick pet.
That's a brilliant answer that I didn't anticipate. That's great.
My frame of reference is wide.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, I know Ridley Scott is apparently working on the next Alien film at the moment.
No, don't.
Yeah, I know. Please leave him alone. Because the first one's perfect. there's no point in having any. I mean, that's just conceptually such a brilliant film. And the others, it's just such a declining rate of return.
It's bizarre. Well, Alien and Aliens, like two different films based off riffing off the same starting point, which I love, right? Like I love the genius of having the balls just to be like, the first one's a haunted house thing in space, the second one's a war movie. That is dead clever thing to do. Everyone else has never done that. Everybody, like the third one was like a prison sort of film, but effectively it was just the first one redone in a prison. I actually want to just have the balls to just completely reinvent it and just be like, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to do something completely different with it again.
Yeah.
But this is, my Aliens dissection. Because Aliens is like one of those films. When I was a kid, I would go into the video store and always beg my dad to get that out. And he would never do it because he was like, it's too scary. I don't want you to watch it. So I never got to watch it until I was like much older. And when I watched it, I hated my dad because like, this is a brilliant film that I could have had in my life for a decade longer than I actually got it.
Yeah.
So I was really miffed off, but I genuinely loved those first two films. Like probably two of my all-time favourite films.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, and you've hit the nail on the head about why they work so well, co-opting those two genres. Stuart, listen to what you said. Have you ever seen the film Zero Effect?
No.
Does that ring a bell? So I would check that out. It's a Jake Kasdan film. It's made around about 98, 99. And basically it's about a Sherlock Holmes figure, a contemporary Sherlock Holmes figure, played by Bill Pullman, called Daryl Zero. And it's the whole film is seen through the eyes of his sidekick. I think it's called Steve Harlow. And that's played by Ben Stiller. Right, and the opening line is something along the lines of, "I really hate that guy," and that's the Ben Stiller character talking about Daryl Zero. But I think I think you'd appreciate some of the licks in that movie based on what you've just been saying.
Yeah, I mean, I do love a sidekick story, but usually it's the kind of what I want to do every book I write is I want to try and take the tropes. Not always, but I like taking tropes and like inverting them or mushing them together in ways that maybe you don't see coming. Because I think what that does is you get all the joy of reader expectation, which you can then upend. Because I'm a fan of this stuff. Like I say, like I take the piss out of Sherlock Holmes, but I read all of those stories back to back, so I know them quite well. So I kind of like, same with Agatha Christie for Seven Deaths, I kind of know what the reader thinks is going to come next because they know the beats of the story as well as I do. So it's really good fun to sort of like tip them upside down or say, actually, we're not doing that one, we're doing this other thing, or it doesn't mean the thing that you think it's going to mean. So stuff like this Zero Effect and sidekick characters, elevating sidekick characters, I think people's expectation is always that they will become the hero in a sort of way, that they'll step into the role, they'll find out blah, blah, blah. And I didn't necessarily want to do that. I wanted them to still be a sidekick. There's nothing wrong with people who want to be sidekicks who just think, actually, this is what I'm doing. So Aaron is committed to keeping Samuel Pepys safe. That's such an honourable thing that it feels to me like it would be ridiculous for me to say, actually, but what he always wanted underneath was to actually be Samuel Pepys. It's not. He's a smart guy. He knows what he wants. We're going to honour that. We're going to let him be that character. But he has this other thing that he has to do thrust upon him, and he's also good at that. But yeah, so I like stuff like that. I like anything where you're not quite getting the story that you think you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm, as I say, that's really maybe we want to tuck into our special edition that Laura set up. So we're hoving towards the end of this sequence. So Laura, I know you've got, what else would you like to ask before we fade out?
So I was going to mention about your writing process. So you said before that it wasn't necessarily an easy process for you for both books. What would you say the biggest challenge for you is for writing a new book?
Do you mean going forward or necessarily for Devil? I made a mistake of thinking I'd learned anything from writing Seven Deaths, which I hadn't. I clearly hadn't. I've learned nothing. I'm a stupid man who repeated all the same mistakes and made brand new ones. The big mistake I made was having a newborn baby at the same time that I started writing my second novel. So adorable as she is and wonderful as she is, she's still 2. So she was born, like I can't get these dates right, but she was born something like a month after I started writing the book, and I finished it. Her second birthday was 2 days after I finished the book. So she occupied its entire lifespan. And as anyone who's ever been even just around children, let alone raising them, knows, like it's incredibly hard to do anything if there's a small child around demanding your attention. So I spent a year of devil writing nonsense because I was so tired and I was so destroyed. So the way I principally work is I plan like mad for 3 months, and then I kind of ingest the information. I don't know. I just, when I'm finished planning, it's in me. I've got it in me. And then if I want to make slight alterations, I can do them on the fly as I write the novel. If the characters, because I discover the characters in the writing. So I plan the plot, but I can't discover the characters while I write. So if the characters, as I'm writing, I find won't do the thing that the plot demands them to do, I change the plot so it fits the characters. And so if another character is more likely to do that thing, I will give it to another character. That's impossible to do if you're tired, because you're not holding information. I wasn't holding on to yesterday's writing, let alone the plot for what was supposed to happen 2 months down the line. So I was just writing pages with no connection, because I just felt I had to get up, work, even if I'd had like half an hour sleep, get up, work, do something. So I wrote, the first draft of Devil was 170,000 words, and not a single page of them connected to any other page in the book, as far as I can remember. It was a nightmare. It was a David Lynchian, it was just awful. It's really bad. Shifting motivations and sort of like big plot points. And I ended up throwing away most of that and kind of starting again after a year, probably about a year, when my head was back together and I could do this the way I wanted to do. So I've learned not to do that again. So, but the thing is, I think I like to write big, complicated books with complex mysteries. I like lots of characters in my books. I like them all to have. I want all my characters to have an inner life as well. I want them to feel like actual fleshed out people with goals and desires and a history before you got there. They're not just there to service the plot. I want them to have interactions with each other that feel organic and real. And I also want nice writing on every page. I want the book at times to feel like a piece of literary fiction, not because I think that's a better genre, but because I enjoy the writing in literary fiction a great deal. I like a beautiful metaphor. I like a beautiful simile. Like I like just an ornate occasional piece of writing. So I'm trying to do a lot with every book. And I do think there's a bit of me that just does that by sort of like fucking it up first and then fixing it later. Like I think a bit of it is just, you've got to get everything down as painful as that can be, and then make sense of it as you go along. So maybe what I've learned for book 3, because I've started writing book 3 now, is not to be afraid of that so much, recognize that it's going to take longer than I want it to take, and that there'll be more wasted words and more wasted time and more stress. But maybe that is just the way I write, unfortunately.
That's just your process.
Yeah. Process is a really beautiful word for the anarchy that is, isn't it? Like,
I just heard someone say it on a chat show, and it seemed appropriate.
It's lovely. I'd love to hide behind the process of what I'm doing, but it's not. It's like somebody. I've described it 2 ways. It's like a builder turning up to build you a house, but then doing it by just throwing bricks until hopefully a house is built.
Yeah,
that is one. It's also been compared to, I've sometimes felt like it's like trying to build a ship that's already set sail. Right, that's what it feels like. I'm already on the water and I'm frantically hammering planks underneath me and sewing up sails and stuff, because that's what it's just a nightmarish mishmash of competence.
And that's a supremely appropriate analogy for this book itself, right? More seamlessly brought the conversation to a conclusion. That's fantastic. So this has been FPTV new releases, and this has been a supremely entertaining conversation covering off sidekicks, Sherlock Holmes, nautical history, the writing process with Mr. Stuart Turton, and we've got a fantastic edition of his new book, exclusive to Forbidden Planet, The Devil in the Dark Water, which you can order from the links attached to this interview. Thanks so much for joining us, mate. Thanks for joining myself and Laura. It's been absolutely brilliant talking to you.
No, I've loved every minute of it. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you having me. And again, thank you so much for that special edition of the books. It is truly beautiful. It's a staggering piece of work.
Yeah. Laura did a great job with that, and we're really proud to have it, mate. You know what I mean? And I can't wait. Based on this conversation, I can't wait to tuck into the book. So that's now at the top of my read list. Thanks for all that, mate.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, you take care of yourself, and please come back and see us again. We do a longer strand called Forbidden Planet Talks to, where given the fact that this conversation itself ended up being a lot longer than these slots normally are, we'd love to get you back and talk about a bunch more things. Do you know what
Definitely.
I mean?
Always happy to come back to FP.
Fantastic. Thank you, mate. Take care of yourself.
You
Thanks,
too, dude.
Stu.
Cheers. Bye. Thank you, Laura. Bye, mate. Bye-bye.